One. Nords.
Hey, Justin. How you doing, my friend?
Remember, I used to always
Uh,
call you that in
I
college.
do. I do. I was wondering if the Nords would make an appearance, and it sounds like it didn't take long.
Does anybody
So,
else call you that, or am I the only one?
and that goes back to my days out at Forest Hills Golf Course, and
Really?
I was a little range rat out there, is what they called us. So I would pick up balls in the range and clean up,
Uh huh.
watch the golf carts. I was 13, 14, and somehow they called me Nords out there. And
I didn't know
it
that. I
just
thought it
stuck
was
all the way.
unique.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of other Nords out there. I'm sure there are a few, but it stuck
Who
all the
else
way
called
through
you
high.
Nords in college?
Well, nobody in college. So
Just me?
you're special in that you
Okay.
reached into the way back into the early teen years of my golfing career out at Forest Hills. So you're in good
I
company.
I didn't even know that. Yeah, I didn't even. That's really cool.
Well,
So
I
the
love
reason
it.
I wanted
Thank
to
you.
have you on, Eric, is flat out. I think you have some of the best perspectives or unique angles to different cultural things, and I kind of just want to use this as an excuse to kind of catch up
Yeah. Well,
instead of
likewise.
of course we could do it on the phone. And that's another thing I wanted to add. I have kind of said it in all the podcasts. I have these great phone conversations with people. We get off the phone and that's it. There's
Yeah.
so and I hate to sound cocky, but I feel like some of these things are pearls of wisdom, if you will. And I want to share them. I want to share them with people. So
Well, that's awesome. Well, that's very
can we
kind
kind
of
of
you. That's very kind of you, Justin. And I really respect what you're doing. You have a passion for influencing change and you want to make an impact. And I love that about you. And I love your honesty and your approach in so many areas of life. So it's good to connect with you today, Justin. Thanks a lot.
so what I really wanted to do first off was we met in college and
Hmm.
we met at the University Christian Center, Oregon
Hmm.
State.
Hmm.
And, we used to always have these great discussions. We were obviously, on fire for Jesus. I had become a Christian a few years. I think we actually kind of are, I don't know what year you became a Christian, but for me, it was right around 2000, somewhere around there. And I think you're similar, right?
Hmm.
Is that when
Yeah,
you
we track right along line there. So 1999, I was baptized and decided to give my life to Christ, and that was a pivotal moment. And I remember those days fondly with you, and I think you had the edge in our ping pong match upstairs. I know we were keeping tallies on that whiteboard, and I think you were up like 623 to 512 or something like that. So you were
Oh
tough.
my gosh.
You're always a
Those are some
competitor.
of
So
those are some of the best times in my
yeah.
life, I have to
It was
admit.
good
I mean,
times.
those were just
Super
amazing, and
fun.
you really hold a special place in my heart, and I
Yeah,
appreciate
likewise.
you.
Yeah, you too.
So really, one of the main reasons I wanna do this is, like I said, we used to have these daily conversations about God and Jesus and faith and et cetera, and I feel like anytime we've kinda talked over the years, we're so busy with family and jobs and all that kinda stuff, this kinda gets pushed to the side. So, this podcast being a faith, business, and politics, I did kinda wanna focus on that. I mean, I could talk about my journey if you feel more comfortable about that first. But we've, about 26, 27 years for both of us. And I've had a lot of ups and downs. But I mean, the ups are fun to talk about, everybody, and maybe some people don't like to talk about the downs, but sometimes I feel like you learn more from your failures than you do your successes. I don't know how you feel about that. But, I was talking the other day to somebody about, the saying is when you fall off your horse, you just jump back on. Well,
Hmm.
what about analyzing? What about, well, why did you fall off?
Yeah.
Was the stirrup loose or was there some your footing or, maybe, take a step back and think a little bit before you actually get on that horse. Cause I mean, I guess we're all supposed to get back on the horse, but there's some, anyway. So sorry to kind of hog the mic here, but anything that I've said that kind of
It-
spurred something you want? Yeah.
oh yeah. I mean, I think the reflection's important. We probably don't do it enough. We kind of stumble into the same mistakes, and we're creatures of habit. To your point, challenge adversity, obviously builds character. And I think that's just a natural law. You think about like muscles getting broken down and built up stronger. It's just like physics. I mean, it just is. So hopefully we get stronger through life and we're able to, work through, battle the challenges. And, as I get older, I have more respect for the older folks because invariably anyone that's 50, 60, 70, 80 plus years old, you know they've gone through tough times. I mean,
Mhm.
you just can't get through this life without, work stress is a thing, but it's even bigger than that. I mean, family challenges, you've got health challenges, you've got community challenges, divisiveness. There's just challenges in every direction, and the longer you go through life, it is a struggle. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of challenges in life, certainly, and hopefully we all would weather the
Why do you
storm
think
and
that is? Why can't God make it easy?
mm, I don't know, probably goes back to the garden, and I think maybe it goes
Okay.
maybe some of it's our doing and our sin and our mistakes and our human nature, but then also there's something good that I think he's working through as well, that
Mhm.
he works, even in our stumblings and or just the adversity of life, we become more aware, we become more merciful, we become more humble. I think humility is a huge God attribute that really comes through challenge and through adversity. And so there's no real replacement for the process of or the impact of adversity in making one humble.
Mhm.
It's just essential. So
Yes.
humility is really important, I think, as a God attribute in that regard.
So what do you think about the concept of, I think we had talked about it on the phone, or maybe I brought it up, I don't know if you did, but the idea of this journey, if you could say, the Bible talks about a marathon, this run that we're on being like a refiner's fire.
Hmm. Oh,
Like somehow
definitely.
kind of you think there's some truth to that? Kinda like preparing us to be with the creator?
I do. I do.
Okay.
I think definitely. I mean, I think it's Romans 8:28. God works all things for the good of those who love Him for for His purposes, His eternal
Mhm.
purposes. And Paul talks a lot about adversity and running the race and pressing on and that that awareness of what God did and comes our point of view comes through just hey life's tough there's
Mhm.
setbacks there's blows there's deaths there's challenges so yeah I think it's totally essential and totally biblical and right down the heart of it absolutely what do you think Justin do you agree
So you mean
Yeah.
so you mean this isn't just like Disneyland for all of us? We're
mm,
not just,
uh,
on the on the, what is it? We're not we can't just always be on vacation? There's actually
right
some things we're supposed to learn.
I
You know what
think
I
so
think? Yeah, you know what I think, Eric? I have, we haven't, like I said, we haven't had a chance to really talk, but I really have been challenged much more than just, actually saying it because some people that have been really close to me, I'm gonna say fallen away, but the reality is they're not believers anymore. And I
mm-hmm,
mean, these are people that grew up in the church. And
mm-hmm,
these are people that, held positions in the church and you would think of them just as pillars, just people that, and I talk to them, and it's like, "Well, what about truth?" What
mm-hmm,
about, and it's like they don't even wanna have a conversation, or there's just so it's really it actually does kind of affect me because
mm-hmm,
these are, you're kind of affected by the close relationships you have in your life.
mm-hmm,
If you agree with that, but, so yeah, I definitely feel like my faith, I know that's kind of a broad, people like to say that my faith has been tested, but those are some of the things that have really tested me because this is like, these are people that I respect. I value their opinion. And it's like, well, gosh, am
mm-hmm,
I, but for some reason, I don't know why, I don't know what it is in my mind, like I don't know if you ever seen that movie Inception where
mm-hmm,
they put an idea deep in your head.
mm-hmm,
For some reason, the idea that this is truth, that the idea that God came as flesh, he lived a perfect life, he died, and he was raised on the third day. For me, that is like an inception idea in my head. I just can't,
mm-hmm.
I don't really know. I mean, maybe, I hate to, listen back to this in 10 years and I don't believe anymore or something, but that idea is just in my head. Do you feel
Mm-hmm.
like that same thing for you, or do you feel different than me?
No, I feel the same way, and I mean, that's the most impactful moment in the history of the universe, and that truth, and it's a big truth. It's a demanding truth. It's one that hey, it's I agree with that or I don't, and that can be dividing. And then to your point about faith being tested when folks fall away, and people are messy. We're messy, and communication's an issue, and when you're involved in things and people let you down or you make a mistake or miscommunications happen, and then is my faith in the systems that I'm creating, is my faith in the people that I admire, or is my faith in God? And that's maybe part of that process too, that adversity process, that hey, at the end of the day, our faith needs to be in God, not in institutions of man or in people, but
100%.
God.
And I actually said this on the Lost Pat podcast. It's so funny. My dad used to always say, "The most important thing is faith." And I'm like, "Yeah, but shouldn't you also, like, qualify what the faith is in?"
Hmm.
Because that's a pretty big factor. If you just say, "Oh, I'm a very faithful person." Well, okay, are you faithful that the sky is red? Or, I mean, it kinda matters what your faith is in, and I think it's
Hmm.
important that you qualify what the faith is in. But, yeah,
Yeah.
so what do you think as far as your faith, and I'm not, if you don't wanna get personal, you can, but, in broad, what in your journey in the last 27, 25, whatever years, do you remember a moment when you felt like your faith was tested the most? Or, I mean, for me, it wasn't actually ever like a moment, it was always kind of like a couple months or weeks or whatever, kinda like a phase in my life. But is there
Hmm.
anything, or do you just felt like the whole last 27 years, you just been steady as a straight as an arrow?
Mm.
You
Yeah.
are pretty perfect. You are a pretty
No,
amazing guy.
yeah, don't raise those expectations too high.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Faith tested. And I kind of mentioned this. I think I think dealing with people, and some of it's my own weaknesses, and failures, maybe decisions that didn't go as well as I had thought. Maybe I built up some idol in my mind of how things should be, and they don't come to be. And my self-reliance, which isn't really faith in God, it's something different. It's more humanistic, and that's maybe what you were kind of criticizing your dad a little bit, that faith and be faithful, and that's more of a confidence thing in yourself, believe
Mhm,
in yourself, and that's not really faith in God in the same way, right? So faith
mhm.
in God. So I think the moments my faith has been tested, it's really the testing of my humanistic faith. It's the testing of the faith that I put in myself, because I let
Okay.
myself down. And I let God
Mhm.
down, I let other people's down. And that's the journey of life, is that if you're trying to do things, or even if you're not, you're just trying to live life, you make mistakes. And that can be discouraging. And if your faith is in your own perfection and your own ability to do things and carry things out, you're going to fail. And
Yeah.
and if that's all your faith is, it will be tested and it will be broken.
Mhm,
But faith in God is something different. It's deeper. But parallel to that is the humility side. I don't
mhm.
have all the answers. I am imperfect. I have sinned. I still struggle with sin.
Yeah.
But my faith is in God. He loves me. He knows me. He knows I've messed up, and he doesn't want me to mess up, and he's refining me. So the faith testing, I think, is really a testing of false faith, that is a faith in others or myself, as compared to true faith in God.
Okay. So you're basically saying when it comes to your faith being tested, it wasn't necessarily like with a family member or a friend or a coworker or a colleague. It was more of like, just kind of your own interior, or your own inner relationship, like with yourself. Is that
Yeah, I
kind of what
think
you're saying?
so. I think
Okay.
so. I mean,
Well, that's cool.
and I think a lot of us, I mean, which we try to be self-reliant. We try to be, we try to fix it. We try to do it ourselves, and we get burned out. We get tired. We make mistakes, and then, we break.
Yeah.
I think incredibly miraculously, God's working through that. And that's where that theme of humility comes back in. It says, Eric, you can't do it on your own. Justin, you're not perfect. Only God's perfect. And
Yeah.
that awareness is then when faith builds, and it's real faith in God, instead of our own compliance, our own accomplishments, our own strength, but faith in the Almighty.
So where do you, in your life, in your personal life, when you interact with people that are not believers, do you feel any pressure? Do you ever feel like Peter, like you have to kind of deny your faith, or your belief in God or Jesus? Or is there are you kind of set up in your personal life where you're able to kind of freely be yourself? How is there any pressure there from the
Yeah,
outside influences?
that's an interesting question. I don't feel it from any of my network, and
Well, that's
I
good.
work with Christians and I work with some non-Christians, and I some of our customers are Christians and some of them aren't. And then, I don't really allow myself to be exposed to people that are going to challenge me directly
Mhm.
at the most fundamental level, at least not very long. I feel like
Yeah.
my confidence is in God, and to be swayed by peer pressure and those things, I feel like I'm a little bit past that. Just to deny Him for the sake of acceptance. I don't feel
Uh-huh.
that temptation anymore. I think that my faith got stronger in that area. It is a challenge though to still manifest Christian qualities in difficult
Yeah.
moments, and maybe dealing with difficult people, or dealing with my own mistakes, and how those play out, and dealing with difficult people. It's there. So sometimes the temper comes, or
Yeah.
the outbursts come, and that's obviously not a Christian quality. So it's there. But in terms of denying Christ due to peer pressure, I don't feel that so much anymore.
What about anybody do you feel like people snickering behind your back, like, "Ah, there's that
Mm.
Bible thunk," "There's that Christian guy, he's all silly." Do you feel like, or I don't have any of that in my personal life, thank God,
I
but
don't think you do, and I think I'm cut from a similar cloth.
uh-huh.
And I've got a little bit of a maybe it may and it's probably borderline arrogance, if you will, of just hey, I this is who I am.
Right. Take it or leave it.
If you think I'm an idiot, or if you think I'm naive, or believing in fairy tales, candidly, I really could not care less. It's
Yeah.
hey, that's fine. I mean, it just my skin has become thicker, and after being a Christian for 25 years and weathering some storms of life, whether it be professional
Mhm.
or personal, that the skin is thicker, and those things are like water off a duck's back.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What about when it comes to I can kinda talk a little bit about and then if you wanna share it all, but when it
Mhm.
comes to parenting, one of the lessons that my I keep talking about my dad, but, where my dad, I would always say, "Do as I say, not as I do,"
Mm.
and I feel like that's a horrible lesson because I believe that kids, do as you do, that they're gonna follow your example. So how do you and I know you're a parent also. I'm a parent of 3 small children, and every day I think about, "Man, am I being the good example for them?" Not in a way of trying to control them or, trying to manipulate them or coerce them into believing how I believe, but I want them to be seeking truth for themselves. Do you have anything that do you find that to be a struggle as a parent, sharing your faith? Or how do you balance, like, not trying to control your child, but still, like, letting them see the light?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a tough one. It's a balance.
It is
As your children get older, you give them a little more freedom. You give them a little more rope. They'll skin their knees, and they'll make some mistakes, and then sometimes you feel bad, you feel angry, you're disappointed, and then sort of the human element of our own insecurities and weaknesses of why isn't my child perfect comes
right.
out, and that hurts your pride, and so there's a ton going on there. But yeah, I think to
Mhm.
your point that they pattern off you. If you lose your temper, they'll probably be more prone to losing their temper. If you swear, they'll probably
Right.
be more prone to swearing. So it is hard. I mean, if you're kids raising kids is, I think it's the most, probably, if not the one of the most difficult human endeavors. It is hard, and it's so revealing. It reveals your character. Like, hey, you're tired, you're hungry, you're getting ready for dinner, and there's some attitude, or there's whatever it may be, and then the temper comes out. I mean, we've all been there, and so and that's revealing, and so.
Yes.
But I do think it gets back to God's working through that process to change us, and to
Mhm.
help the little person grow into a healthy, adjusted. And kids are resilient. No, they know we're not perfect, and sort of pretend that we're perfect to them is not realistic. And maybe give your dad a little credit there, that hey, I'm not perfect. I'm asking
Right.
for perfection. I know he asked a lot of you, and he was challenging and demanding, and also maybe wise enough to admit that he wasn't. Maybe not. Maybe that was a interesting way of admitting that he wasn't perfect, but he wants super
Mhm.
high, super grand things for you. So maybe look at it in the bright side in that standpoint. But yeah, racing.
Let me make sure I heard you
Yeah,
correctly because I think that
yeah,
was a really good point. Did you say children raising children?
yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Well,
because that's the reality, like, somehow, like, as soon as we become a parent, we're supposed to, like, know what to do or something, and
yeah.
I feel like that all the time. I'm like, "Wait a minute, I'm still a kid.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
still figuring this out. I
yeah.
have 3 kids, and somehow I'm supposed to just, snap a finger, and I'm supposed to be a parent now." But I love that, like, children, raising children. I mean, that's anyway, that where
Well,
did you come up with Yeah.
I don't think you know what's interesting is I think I remember you saying something like that many years ago, talking
Really?
about your sweet mom and how as you got a little bit older, you began to see her as maybe more human. Hey, she's it's my mom, but she's a human. She's got her own strengths and weaknesses, and I think that's sort of an awareness step that you got to that our kids will get to as well, and that as you're an adult, you see your parents and they're aging or whatever the case might be. Hey, my parents are not perfect. I mean, they were great providers and but they're not perfect and my our daughter's gonna she already knows obviously we're not perfect so that didn't take long but that but then she's gonna be an adult. Hey, I'm not perfect. That's her speaking. I'm not perfect. My parents weren't perfect, but hopefully they all understand God's perfect. He's got a perfect plan. He's got a perfect process. We fit into that process, albeit imperfectly.
Yes. Yeah. Alright, well, can we, shift gears a little
Sure.
bit, kind of tackle or not tackle, but, the podcast is faith, business, and politics, so
Hmm.
actually, one of the things every time we talk on the phone, I always wanna talk about this, and we never end up having time, but, I remember, you graduated before me, and you immediately went into construction, but after that, I don't really know, like, what happened to your career. I don't really know is there can we kinda touch on your
Sure.
maybe even kinda tie it into faith or kinda how your the last 25 years of your
Oh my
career has
goodness.
gone?
25
Oh, I
years.
mean, we
That's
don't have to you
amazing.
don't have
No,
to
eh,
go into it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, it's fine. No, it's great. Yeah, it's just amazing to hear you say 25 years.
I know,
I
right?
started working for a large national home builder in Portland, based out of Texas, Centex Homes, and they were good enough to put me through a business program. So I got my MBA in '05. Market crashed in '08. So, but anybody in home building or construction or a lot of industries at the time absolutely disintegrated. And so,
Mhm,
in 2008, had to move up to Seattle to really keep my employment with Centex. Did that. That was a good move for us. It was just Gretchen and I at the time, and so we moved up to Seattle, and I worked for the Seattle division. For 4 or 5 years, weathered through the correction of '08, 9, 10, and that was great. It was a great career. I was kind of purchasing and a little bit of strategic marketing, and then the company merged with another national builder, and that was a little rough for a year or two there. So around 2013, 2014, I went to work for a private developer, family owned private developer, which was a very different experience as compared to working for a big publicly traded corporation. Learned a lot, did some different work there on entitlements, project management, and then only was there for about a year, and then I went to work for a contractor who was interior finishes, so flooring, countertops, carpet, also privately owned by three men who were very dynamic and interesting guys. Really liked them a lot. Worked there for
mhm,
I don't know a couple 3 years and had a leadership role there, and that was a lot of fun. It was really hard. I was really out of my comfort zone managing, kind of sales and operational teams and just very, very raw. And I was in a warehouse, I was out in the field, I was delivering
mhm,
grout. And I mean, just, working in a granite fabrication facility, just very different. And then I
mhm.
went to work for a luxury builder in Mercer Island for a year or two. We got wild hair to move over to Wenatchee and still worked for them for a little while and made the commute over once a week. But then COVID hit 2020 and they made a real aggressive choice to, hey, we really got to change our cost structure. So I was actually laid off in, I think it was spring or early summer of 2020, and which was fine. And weathered the COVID deal here at home and a lot more time with family. Got my insurance license during that
What year
time.
was that?
So that was 21, 22. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
so
so
just a
20,
few
yeah, just a
after
few years
COVID.
ago. Yeah. Just after COVID, kind of at the tail end of COVID, I went to get my insurance license just
Uh-huh,
sort of on a whim and a few anecdotes there. Finally, I got connected with State Farm, and I work for a large agency here in Wenatchee, and I work for a woman named Linda Sassine, and she's a phenomenal business leader. Really respect her a lot. She's got a really great office. And so I'm a licensed insurance agent. So I do home, auto, life, some business policies, and have a good time part time. So I get to have a
Oh
little
my
more
gosh, I had
freedom.
no we gotta
Yeah.
promote that. I mean, we can definitely when I, put the key if you're okay with it, we can put those keywords in
Yeah.
the, is that okay with you, or do you not wanna promote that?
Yeah, we could let me think about that for a moment.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Well,
she's got a lot of
I'll s
business. She's got a great marketing approach. I mean,
okay.
but no, I thank you.
Yeah.
So
Well, after we're done with the podcast, I'll send
sure.
it to you, and I'll kinda send you the keywords that I'm gonna use, and you can
Okay.
modify or
Yeah,
do
yeah.
whatever you want.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds
Well, that's
good.
exciting, I had no
Thanks,
idea.
man.
So
Yeah, it's been
you
fun.
really I mean, really for the last so kind of construction for almost 20 years, and then
Yeah.
just this you had a really big career change. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, really big.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I've always been
okay.
drawn to financial services and by extension insurance. I mean, my mind is geared that way, attention to detail, risk management. I interact with people. We've got a lot of systems. We got a lot of products. It fits. It works really well for me. So I enjoy it. I actually really
Okay.
do. I mean, insurance is obviously not the sexiest business in the world,
No, but
but
it pays the bills.
I mean, it's a huge industry. In fact, I think it might be the largest industry in the world. I'm not sure about that. If you think about
Yeah,
I mean, essentially all assets are most, or if not vast majority of assets are insured one way or another. So
yeah.
you got to underwrite all that, and so you're probably talking trillions of dollars, I would
Mhm.
imagine. So it's major, major league. So we just do home auto life and some small business policies, but it's a lot of fun. State Farm's a great company. I love the people that I get to interact with from the public view. The folks of the Wenatchee area are just terrific people. So it's a lot of fun. It's actually a really
Yeah.
good time.
It says that insurance globally is a $7.1 trillion
Wow.
industry.
Yeah. $7
So
trillion
it's
dollar plus. I mean, yeah, that's ginormous, right? I mean, that
yeah,
is huge.
yeah, yeah. Well, wow, I had no idea. I'm so glad I asked that question.
Thanks, man.
So what, so do you kinda miss the construction, or are you like, "Oh, man, I'm
Hmm.
happy to be kinda moved on," or it's just different? It's just like,
So
do you like an
construction,
apple? Do you like an orange?
construction's up and down. I mean, it's either really good
Mhm,
or really bad. It's feast or famine. It's very cyclical. So when it's really good, you can't hire enough people, you can't make enough money. I mean, it's just wild. And then when it's
mhm.
bad, you're just totally deconstructing everything. You're firing everybody. You're slashing costs. It's blood in the streets. So that's a little tough. I don't miss that. I do miss being out in the field. I miss seeing projects come together. I miss the tangible of a new neighborhood, that's taking shape. That's a lot of fun. That is a lot of
Yeah.
fun. So yeah,
Well, maybe you get to do some of that stuff at your or, not in the grand or in the big picture like you did before, but maybe just, putzing around the house and stuff, you get to
yeah. Well,
have a
I
couple
got a lot of weeds to pull. I've got some holes to dig for Gretchen, and there's never ending little projects around the place for sure.
Well, what do you think about transitioning to politics, or do you wanna stay on
Sure.
your career a little longer?
No, yeah, you're the boss, man. I think this is great. Yeah.
Well, I really I wanted to do this podcast to, have it, me be the one asking questions, obviously being the host, but it's really about, you and anything that you wanna promote or, move forward. Obviously, you're a believer in Jesus, we spend a lot of time at that, but, let's because I know you have some, in my opinion, some amazing ideas when it comes to politics. So I'm not sure what we tackle first. Maybe let's see, faith and politics. I'm not sure. Let me think about this. Do you have any? Is there anything you're passionate about? I should go back and look at some of your recent posts, or maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. But is there anything you're passionate about with politics right now, or nothing on the
Mm.
forefront?
I've kind of been in a posture of a lot of skepticism and frustration towards big institutions, big power for a long time, and
Hmm.
it's maybe a bit of an unhealthy obsession, to be perfectly honest. But
Hmm.
at a passionate, I mean, it's hard. I mean, this world's not our home. These political institutions and man-made structures are not eternal. They are very fallible, and so it's frustrating. And I think most people are frustrated. I mean, even if you're on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, honestly, I think everybody agree we're frustrated. This
Right.
isn't how it should be. It should be better. And I think that everybody agrees on that. Now, obviously, there's at least two modes of thought that, one are, hey, I'm way right or I'm way left. And it seems right now everybody's sort of in different camps on that. But most agree it's frustrating. It's hard. Why aren't these
You know, I wanna
institutions
you know what I wanna be, Eric? I wanna be American.
yeah, yeah,
When can
yeah.
we when is
Just
that time gonna
American.
happen?
Yeah,
You
just
know? When
American.
do
Yeah.
Right? Like, when are we
Well,
just gonna be proud of the country where we
I
live?
know.
Like, I feel like other countries have such great I've spent some time in Italy, and it's like, there's so much Italian pr we are Italian, like,
Mm,
there's so much pride. I mean, other countries you go to, it's like, why can't and I feel like, gosh, a country like America, which we know is amazing at propaganda, just look what happened in Japan. We
yeah.
dropped a nuke on them, and now, Japan loves us. And people argue, well, there was no propaganda. Come on. Everybody
Right.
knows that America is like the king of propaganda.
Yeah.
So it's like, I feel like America could do it. If they wanted to get some national pride going and all that, it's just
Yeah.
like, why won't they? And that's the better
I don't know,
question.
man. I don't know if it's the literal enemy or just some kind of man-made force that wants us divided. The left-right is sort of a shorthand, easy division, and then it's divided further than that at almost every level. So it's sadly really the opposite of what you're saying. I wish we didn't have parties. I think that would be a lot better. So people had to didn't have, oh, I'm a D or I'm an R. But it's a tough deal. We can wish all we want, but I think those other, some of those other nations, probably like in Europe and other places. I mean, I think their history and their culture is a little bit long-standing and a little bit more, maybe slightly one-dimensional. Whereas the United States,
Mhm,
obviously, there's a founding that's much newer, and there are cultures that came from every place in Europe and
mhm,
every place in Southeast Asia and Middle East and beyond Africa. So our dynamic is different, and so the
mhm.
American identity, I aspire for it and long for it just as much as you do, is a taller ask, and it's more of an idea rather than a culture. As Italian, I mean, obviously they would say, hey, we're an idea, we have our passions, but it's like, hey,
Mhm.
my family's lived here for 5 centuries or 6 centuries or a millennia. And whereas the United States, it's like, my parents are Irish and my mom's
Right.
Irish and my dad's Japanese, and her family came here 3 generations, and my dad's family came here 2 generations, whatever it might be. It's a different history, but the idea of American freedom and liberty I'm very
Mhm.
excited about that. And I know you are too, and I think most people
Yeah.
are. What it means in practical terms, we fight like cats and dogs about, but
Mhm.
yeah,
Maybe what you're kinda or what I kinda hear you saying is maybe some patience should be involved, and maybe there's something, like that, it's just hard as I get older, and I'm
yeah,
sure, my ancestors were the same way. When you see something, it's hard to ignore, it's like, am I supposed to ignore? I mean, this is obvious in my face,
yeah,
so do I just not do anything? Do I not say anything? The last guest I had on the podcast, his name was David Kendall. He's an economist from Virginia, very smart man. I asked about his faith, and he is a deist, which I actually didn't know a lot about that. I guess Thomas Paine was a deist, one of the most famous deists, one of our founding fathers. I did a little research, but one of the things we kind of talked about, being an economist, and he actually wrote a book called and Morality and Capitalism. So, a lot of times when I talk to my far left friends, when we talk about capitalism, they talk in terms of it being negative in the way of like some of these larger companies out there that almost have like monopolies or like
hmm
antitrust,
hmm
like Google and Amazon. And it
hmm
was interesting. I said, "Well, David, can I play devil's advocate?" And he's like, "Well, you're gonna have to give me an example." And the first one I did was Amazon, and he just ripped that apart. And then I
mm
gave him Google, and he just ripped that apart. But I
mm.
still think it's interesting, and I did wanna get your take on it if you're willing to. What do you think about the idea of capitalism in the way of, you know, maybe it is a good idea in theory, but, sometimes these companies get so big, it's like,
Mm.
is there a free market? What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. I sometimes think they might get big through non-free market tactics, right? So regulatory
Mhm,
capture, they influence the rule makers, and they
Mhm.
influence those rule makers in a way that gives them competitive advantages, and so they
Mhm.
they do become monopolistic. So ironically, it's almost like we criticize capitalism because it seems like capitalism is producing these behemoths, but
Mhm.
they may be getting that way through non-capitalistic means.
Mhm.
So I don't, does that make sense? I mean,
Yes.
so if you regulatory capture, hey, I get to, I own all the regulators.
Mhm.
And so but regulators, I mean, if you think about pure market, free market capitalism, there's really not regulators. I mean, who,
Mhm.
is there somebody really setting the rules, enforcing, environmental standards in a pure free market cap uh, model? So,
Mhm.
but if there are regulators, and I can write the code for the regulators, and then my products serve or can comply with that code better than anybody else's. Over
Mhm.
time, you're going to have a competitive advantage, and you could become, you could be a monopoly. And I don't know if that's the case. The Googles and the Amazons. I don't know if that's really part of their history, and to what degree. But
Mhm.
I do think that's real. I think a free market capitalism anarchy environment is not realistic and not be one that I would
Mhm.
support.
Mhm.
But those that do set the rules, those that are the regulators, they have to be people of integrity. They cannot be
Mhm.
influenced through, influence peddling, right? So if you're
Right.
a lawmaker, you're a rule maker, you're a regulator, but you're influenced by a big lobbyist organization that serves their own interests at the expense of others, and certainly at the expense, at the expense of their competitors, and also at the expense of the public. That's not good. So at the end
Right.
of the day, you got to have good people in charge. You got to have good people that are the rule makers and the regulators and legislators, and faith in politics. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want somebody saying you have to be a Christian or you have to be a Hindu. But I do want people that are people of character and people of integrity
Mhm.
in charge, and
Right.
and trust, they have a public trust to set fair rules and set fair standards to protect things like our environment or protect our,
Yeah.
some shared resources. So if that's capitalism or pure capitalism or whatever, but that's what I would like, and I think that's very
Mhm.
fair and good, and what we aspire for as Americans, and most people do, left or
Mhm.
right. I think most people would agree with what I just said. There's nothing controversial about what I said.
Yeah, I do feel like the majority of us actually agree versus disagree when you really get
Mhm.
kinda down to the
Mhm.
core things,
Mhm.
it's most people just wanna do their thing, live, hang out with their family,
Mhm.
have so I feel like in general, obviously it kinda gets divided when you get it real specific or whatnot, but he had, 4 pillars that he talked about for to have a true, 'cause like, again, he wrote this book, Morality and Capitalism, and what the
Mhm.
3rd pillar was freedom, and I was like, "Well, gosh, if I wanted to go out and, make a cell phone, I mean, really, I'm competing against Apple and
Mhm.
Google," you know?
Yeah.
And he's like,
Yeah.
"Well, a lot of" or if I wanted to go out and make a search, where people typed in search things, I'm competing against Google, and it's like and I mean, he said there's competitors in all those different markets, and I don't
Mhm.
disagree with him. It's just that, I almost feel like sometimes those competitors are there just to so they can have an excuse. Hey, we're not,
Yeah.
antitrust or we're not a monopoly. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. So, what do you think about? Is there anything that you would say to your if all of a sudden we were playing ping pong at the University Christian Center and yourself right now showed up, like a genie or whatever. Do you have any advice to your younger self or anything or nothing you can or but you're probably perfect. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
right.
probably
Right.
is there any advice you would give? I know that's a tough question sometimes, but is there
Uh,
any advice that you would give to
yeah.
yourself at that maybe practice more ping pong so you can beat
Yeah,
Justin
right.
or
Right, exactly. That's a good one. I think, maybe don't be so hard on yourself.
yeah. Well, that's a good one.
Knowing, you're gonna make mistakes. If you're making decisions, you're gonna make mistakes because you're human, and you're trying to lean into something, and you're dealing with imperfect information. So, but
Yeah.
be decisive, and stick with it, and maybe buy some Bitcoin as soon as it comes out.
Yes, that would have been great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good question. How about you,
yeah, what
Justin?
would
What would
I
you
would
say to your younger self? I mean,
that
that's a great, I'd love to
that's
hear
so
that.
funny that because as I was asking you the question, I was like, "Man, what would I say?"
Mm,
And I think, I would say, yeah, it's like the book or wherever am I saying that right? David's son, Solomon?
mhm.
Is that,
Yeah.
it
Yep.
kinda the end there, he's kinda saying, "It just doesn't matter."
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it does
Yeah.
matter, and we need to do our best, but it isn't as important as
Yeah.
I think I thought it was.
Yeah.
That's hard to say because I don't want our audience to think it's not important. It's just that it's like a balancing. It's like, man, it just wasn't as important as I thought it was. I mean, yeah, don't be so hard on yourself. But
Yeah.
don't allow like a little bit more grace. I mean, I always understood that grace is important, but genuinely allow a little more of it and really like you kind of said, the humbleness, it's the older I get, Eric, the more
Mm.
I feel like I don't know.
Yeah.
Every day that goes by, I'm like, "Oh, man, I thought I understood that, but actually I don't." So, that's a tough balance because, when you're in a business meeting and you can't exactly say, "Well, I don't understand this. I don't get it."
Mm. Mm.
That's a struggle, but, I mean, it's to be between friends, you and me, I mean, that's the truth. I don't have all the answers. I'm just doing the
Yeah.
best I can.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great refrain. The meaningless, meaningless, everything's meaningless. The chasing about, our little idols that we build and we control. Don't sweat them. Don't sweat the small stuff. When you say wisdom, getting older, I think it's Socratic wisdom is really true wisdom, knowing you don't really know anything.
Yeah.
And also, I would say in the business sense, I've been around leaders and somebody's presenting something and there's a handful of people in the room from high C-level executives to mid-level managers and everybody's might be like, I'm not sure what that means or that ratio or
Mhm.
something. And it's the CEO that says, "Can you explain that to me?" And it's
Right.
because he or she it might be so confident in their own skin that they can
Mhm.
admit, I don't understand what that means. Can you unpack that a
Yep.
little bit? Or can you share that? And it's like that's true confidence. If you get to a place that you can walk
Yep.
into a room and say, "Hey, I'm not trying to compare myself to somebody else. Oh, look what kind of shoes he's got. Look what kind of watch she's got. I've got. I know who I am. I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. And if I don't know something, I'm confident enough to ask." And I love
Yep.
that honesty about you because
That's a great lesson. That is a
you're
great
you're an
lesson.
honest man, and I love that about you because it's like, "Hey, I don't know," or
Yeah.
"Help me to understand." And that's like to me, if
Well,
somebody says that in that setting, it's like, boom, my admiration level goes through the roof. They're confident. They're truly trying to understand. I didn't know. I wasn't gutsy enough to admit I didn't know, but they're 3 levels up in the organization, and they just admitted they don't know. Wow, that's
right.
awesome.
Yes. That is such an important lesson, and I gotta expand on that further because I've been in countless, business meetings, board meetings, those kind of things, and when I was younger in those settings, I just felt like, I just felt totally stifled. I just felt
Mm,
like it just wasn't very productive. I just felt like a lot of, and I just felt like I'm supposed to know more, and I don't, but I can't speak up, and
mm,
it's just like nothing ever would really happen.
mm,
However, when I got older and I realized how important it was to be real in a business setting, I would have so many people come up to me after the meeting and
yeah.
say, "Thank you so much for
Yep.
that," because I was sitting there thinking exactly the
Yep.
same thing,
Yep.
and you brought it up, and maybe it didn't make you, or they didn't say this, but I mean, they would just come up and say, "Thank you." It was good,
Yeah.
and that's where real growth happens, and
Yeah.
that's where, positive things can happen in the organization or, moving forward because a lot of times if you have a question, somebody else does
Yeah.
too. And I mean,
Right.
maybe, I mean, there's no stupid questions, but, I mean, I guess anyway, so
Mm,
yeah, that's a great lesson. That's a
mhm,
really good one and that I would try to teach myself
mhm.
that hopefully somebody's listening and can get that one.
Yeah.
But I kind of threw in some last things with artificial intelligence, and the reason why is I'm trying to do this podcast thing, obviously, and so I researched what's the most listened to podcast of all time, and I can tell you, you don't know who it is, right? Or what episode it was?
Boy, I'm gonna guess Joe Rogan. That's probably
Yep,
not it. Is it Joe
it
Rogan?
was Joe
Yeah.
Rogan. It was Joe
Yeah.
Rogan, and guess who the guest was?
Ooh, oh my goodness. It's not Alex Jones, is it?
No, it was 2018, the
Okay,
most viewed
2018.
podcast of, 2018.
I don't know. Who was it?
It was Elon Musk.
Oh, okay.
So
I was
that's the
gonna
most
guess that. I was too much of a wimp to guess that. Okay. Okay. I didn't know he was quite on the scene with Rogan in 18, but I guess he was. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah,
Elon
I
Musk,
didn't know that
and
either.
they probably broached AI, I imagine.
Yes, a lot. I
Yeah,
was so it was so interesting to listen to that because, we're 7 years later now, and the things that Elon really were kinda saying, really, I guess, but I feel like it's been a lot different. Do you use artificial intelligence,
I
or
do. I use it a lot.
which one
I
do you
use
which one do you use?
I use mostly Grok.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been comfortable with that, and
Yeah.
I think it's a absolute history-changing technology. I used to
Mhm.
think that about the internet, but I honestly think it's bigger than the internet because it leverages the internet. The internet is
Mhm.
historical as well,
Mhm.
but I think AI is bigger, and because it can, I mean, the capability just in the last year or two is just mind-blowing. I mean, if I have a question about something, I mean, hey, help me to buy a suit. Help me to organize the shirts and the ties and the shoes and the belt and the watch and give me some combinations. I could go Google that and get pieced together a few anecdotes here there, read somebody's little blog about it, read a little article about it, go to a retailer site, or I could just ask Grok, and it's like it's just a data dump. I mean, not even a data. I mean, just a synthesized, smartly
Yeah.
tuned in report, and then I can interact with it. And I can say, well,
Right.
what about this? What if I add this? Or what if I want to search for that one on Amazon and want to pay less than $50? Boom, here's your top three options. Here's the pros and cons of each. Mind blowing. And then, I
Yes.
mean, just the ability to compose, to write. I mean, it's like having a professional speech writer or editor at your disposal. I've seen it done in meetings where it's recording the meetings and it synthesizes the notes and prepares action items. And
Yes.
it's like having the best secretary that you could ever have in your meeting at your disposal in real time all the
Yeah,
time. And that's just, I mean,
exactly.
that's just the tip of the iceberg, and that's not even the real, probably industrial grade stuff that
Right.
it can do. So no, it's incredible. So you
So I
use it
use
too, then? Yeah,
Yeah, so I use ChatGPT, so I don't know a
yeah.
lot about Grok. So is Grok a Twitter thing? Is it a
It's
Elon Musk
from
thing?
yeah,
Or
it's an Elon Musk. It's from the Twitter X paradigm, and
okay.
you
So how
know,
do they have, like, an app for your phone, or do you have to
yeah,
use it
they
on your
do.
desktop,
Yeah.
or okay.
You can access it through the X app. You can access it through the X website, or you can have a Grok app. You can go to Grok Direct. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's
It
there,
has
and
all the
I think
same
it's similar to ChatGPT. Pretty
OpenAI,
similar. Yeah.
ChatGPT, yeah.
Yep. Pretty similar, I imagine. But
Uh-huh.
I'm blown away by it. Absolutely blown away
Yeah,
by it.
me too. I feel like it's a little bit, like, when you hear about it, Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, it was like gonna be it was gonna be a HAL, like something that's
Mm,
gonna take over and have its own, and so I don't know, I guess,
yeah.
people thought a
Yeah.
lot of things about the internet too that necessarily, haven't really come true. But,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's okay, like robots or nanotechnology. I mean, it's kind of the same fears. Yeah. I mean, there's going to probably be some economic displacement. There's going to be some jobs that change, some skills that change. But I talked to a person I respect greatly that's from the kind of software computer industry, and
mhm,
he said it was like, you got to know how to use it, and the folks who know how to
right,
use it are going to have advantages over the folks that don't. But
right.
whether it literally replaces a dentist or a sheetrocker or a plumber, a landscaper. I mean, I've seen some
Well
robot AI videos, but I think it's a lot of upside, a lot of upside.
well, have you heard one of the reasons it's not expanding as much as all the people that kinda have stakes in it, why it's not expanding as fast as they would like it to? Have you heard
What's
why?
no, what's that?
So one of the deals or the issues with it is they have to build these data centers, right?
Mm,
To really, house all the infrastructure or the
mm-hmm.
hardware.
Yeah,
Well, anytime you build one of these data centers, you need qualified electricians, people that understand, and that's the real limiting factor right now, is they're
interesting.
not able to really kind of expand like they want to because they got the money, they
Yeah,
got the real they have everything, but the qualified electricians just don't exist. I mean, it's just they're all I mean, if you're an electrician right now,
mm,
you're
mm-hmm.
you're working. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
reality. And if you're not, there's something. But yeah, I think that's really interesting because
yeah,
in 2018 when they're talking about this, it's kind of like this one monster. It's like this AI monster,
mm,
and we were kind of talking about capitalism, and I think that's actually a really good thing that there's, Microsoft has one, Elon Musk, X, Twitter has one,
Mhm,
OpenAI, which I try to do research who really, has a stake in that. I think that might be a little bit tied with Oracle, a
mhm,
little bit. I don't know exactly because it seems like a lot of the data centers that are being built with OpenAI are also being Oracle
mhm,
data centers. So I'm not exactly sure all the politics of that and who, but I think it's actually a good thing. What did
mhm,
you say that, that there's this free market of these
mm.
different AI tools or,
Yeah.
do you think that's a good thing? Yeah, I think it's a good thing.
Oh, I think it's great. I mean, kind of get back to the morality of capitalism, if you will. I mean, I think it's a destructive creativity to capitalism. There might be some jobs or types that are destroyed, but there's going to be new ones that are created. But then the old ones, the old safeguards. I mean, essential industries, electricians or plumbers. I mean,
Mhm.
people. That's going to be there. So I think it's great. I think a lot of upside. I mean, there's obviously some downside too. Sometimes it takes a little bit of humanity out of some interactions. I mean, if you're a hiring manager and you get 25 resumes and cover letters that are all AI generated, that can be a little bit of a bummer, and it's like, well, how do you really
Yeah.
find the right candidate if they all are using the same AI machine to generate all their information? So
Yeah, but Eric,
there's
what I found,
yeah.
they're all using the ATS software, which I
Oh,
think it stands for automatic tracking software or something like that.
okay. Okay.
So they're all, and that's what I'm kinda learning is that, like, LinkedIn is almost becoming like a
Yeah.
monopoly now in the way
Yeah.
of if you're looking for some sort of executive type position and you don't
Mm,
have your LinkedIn, like, on point,
mm,
it's not gonna happen,
yeah.
and it's all kinda tied with this ATS and the
Amazing.
LinkedIn. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see here. I had another question about artificial intelligence well, I kind of wanted to bring the faith side into it. Uh, I saw a clip or a reel or something the other day. Have you seen these people that give instructions to artificial intelligence and they say, if you can't answer something, say like Apple? Have you seen any of these people?
No.
Have you seen any of that? You haven't. Okay.
No.
Well, I saw one the other day. It was a guy. I didn't really know a lot about him, but he talked about doing a Bible study every morning, and he said that again. I don't know really his past or his history or anything. He basically talked about he gave some instructions to I think he might have been using Grok, I can't remember. He basically the short thing of what he was saying is that his AI basically said that evil spirits were influencing the technology. I don't know, that was super interesting to me, and, because just like you, it sounds like I use AI hours a day. I mean,
Mhm.
I have found, though, you can't just take it for what you have to analyze it. If you don't
Mhm.
analyze it,
Yeah.
I mean, if I just grab it and send it, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I'm gonna look like a
Yeah.
total idiot.
Yeah.
It's a tool. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had an assistant I was lucky enough to have an assistant one time at work, and she was amazing, she was great, but, I mean, what artificial intelligence can do for me compared to what
Mm.
she could do, I
Yeah.
mean, it's like there's no comparison. I mean, I'll be driving along and think of something and say, "Hey, do this and write this for me so when I get to the office, I can just copy and paste this letter and it's
Yeah.
done."
Isn't that something?
Yeah, I,
It's
uh
amazing.
I got a 30-page contract the other day, and I grabbed it, threw it in. I was driving, so I had AI verbally tell me all the highlights and all the pain points,
Wow.
because I had already had a project for what I was working on. It verbally told me all the pain points, and I basically responded back verbally and said, "All right, well, respond like this." I had to make a couple of I said, "No, no, no, change this, change that."
Mhm.
And within 15 or 20 minutes, I had a written response back on the 30-page contract. And the
That's
guy
amazing.
called me yeah, and the guy called me and he said, "What are you talking about? I just sent that to you." I said, "I know.
Oh
I'm
my
fast."
goodness.
And
Wow.
he goes, "What do you mean? How'd you have a chance to?" And I said, "I told you, I leverage technology
Yeah.
and I'm quick."
Yep.
And he goes, "Yeah," because he's like, "Well, what about this?" And I had an answer for every single thing. And he's like, "Wow, you did go through every 30 pages." And I was
Amazing.
like, "Well, not personally."
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, Do you use it at work?
I use it a little bit at work. I mean, State Farm's got some pretty proprietary systems and programs, but we can
Mhm.
put some content into a little AI machine, and it'll improve the communication. It'll clean it up and do some things there. I'm sure the insurance industry has a lot of analysis, analytical tools that are leveraging AI for risk management, actuarial tables, that huge amounts of data and risks. No, my level, no, I don't. I don't really use it at work. Just for personal. I mean, when I'm drafting communication for personal, or even if I'm organizing a study or a thought, or even a biblical thought, I enjoy using AI to bounce ideas off of, or hey, help me find these scriptures, or it is very quick. But to your point, you gotta check it. I mean, you got to make sure
Yeah,
it's right, and also whether there's evil influences involved. I would say essentially every human endeavor has evil influences. I mean,
right?
look at media, look at television, look at what's what's available on the internet. So just driving down the street. I mean, there's evil influences everywhere, and we gotta be wise as serpents and as doves, and but to not use the technology, boy, to me it's just historically significant technology, even more so than the internet. I'm just shocked by its capacity.
So would you say if somebody says, "Ah, I'm not gonna use AI," would you say that's similar to somebody back in the past that said like, "Oh, I'm not gonna use the internet?"
Probably.
Yeah,
Probably a bit. Yeah. Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, there's something to be said for picking up a book or using an old, corded phone, or, there is something to be said for that. And so I
right.
I admire those folks greatly, and they're kind of a dying breed, but they've got a special wisdom and way about them too. So I
Mhm.
wouldn't be overly judgmental, but for me and what I do and what I have on my plate, to me it's a really helpful tool.
Yeah.
Really helpful
What
tool.
about so you mentioned can I add do you hang out with Christians at all, like, during the weekends or anything, or do you attend a church regularly? I can kinda give you I my folks go to a church that I wouldn't say I'm a member of, but I like bringing my kids there because I like to for them to have the positive influence, so I'm not the best, like, churchgoer. I seem
Yeah,
to always end up there every Sunday,
that's
but
awesome.
I wanna get, like, more involved, and I wanna it's just that, I struggle with the modern day church because I a little bit feel like they're not really churches, they're like a business that just,
Yeah.
operates as a donor factory. But what can you kinda touch on that a little bit, or
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, certainly organizationally, it's a challenge. I mean, it's anytime you have people together in an endeavor, churches or not, it's a challenge. Yeah, so we're real involved with our local church. So we go to First Church of Christ here in Wenatchee. I'm an elder there. We've been attending there for about 6 years, pretty much since we moved to Wenatchee, and it's a sweet, it's pretty small, maybe 30, 40 of us, maybe 50 in that range. A little bit older demographic, but just some really sweet people, and we love it. We love
the total people is 30?
Yeah, probably 30 to 40 people. Yeah. Yeah,
Wow,
so
that's
very small.
awesome.
Yeah, it's really small and intimate. I mean, our sermon lesson structure is a little more conversational. We're trying to be, just a little bit more interactive, and it's not a show, it's not a production. There's no fog machines, there's no laser light shows, there's no big edifices for somebody's ego. I mean, it is just simple, basic Christianity, and we just want to love the Lord and learn and grow and be good to one another and be good to the folks that God brings us. So that's it. Yeah. So we
Well,
love
I
it.
had
We're
no
Yeah,
idea, that is
yeah,
really cool.
that's sweet.
Well,
Yeah.
do you mind I mean, when I
No,
asked
it's
you
fine.
about your work or career or
Sure.
whatever, you kinda were saying, "Well, let me think about that," so definitely. But can we talk about your church
Yeah.
more? And
Yeah.
actually, I mean, are you guys, like, seeker friendly in the way of trying to get more people to attend, or you kinda feel like, "No, no, we're good with where we're
No,
at,"
we
or
would love people to come. We would love
well,
to see
let's
people
use this
attend. Yeah.
podcast as a way to is that
Yeah. Let's
okay?
do it.
Can you
Yeah.
kind of
Sure.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, so tell me about so you mentioned a gentleman that might wanna does that gentleman go to your
Yes.
church, or is that a
Yeah.
different church?
Yeah.
Okay,
No, he's our minister. Yep. Yeah. Daniel.
okay.
Yep. Yeah.
So how long has Daniel been there? How long have you
I think
guys
about
no
2.5. Let's see, is it 2 or 3 years? I always get it confused. Let's see, I think it was 23, so probably right about 2 years.
okay.
So
So
Yes.
what you guys meet one time a week, one time a week, or
Yeah, just formally one day a week, Sunday mornings, and then there's
okay,
there's
what time?
there's a prayer group, there's a few other little events kind of ad hoc. We meet at 10:10.
10:10.
10:10, and that's
Okay,
from John chapter 10, verse 10, which is Jesus saying, "I have come that they may have abundant life." And so it's an abundant life.
okay,
Or so we did meet at 10:15. We thought we'd move it up 5 minutes to try to draw attention to that verse. So
that's fun.
it's a sweet group, and we have a lot of partners in the community. We have a school that meets there that's sponsored by a larger church in the area. We have a Spanish church that meets in our building on Sunday afternoons, and then we just started partnering with a an outreach organization that is helping kids at risk of drug abuse and substance abuse,
Okay.
and so it's really sweet. So they use our space on Thursday evenings. So we have a big old facility that's about 38,000 square feet. That we're there Sunday mornings, obviously, but way more than we
Hold
need.
on. What did you say?
30, I
800
think
or
it's
30?
38, I think it's 34,000 square feet. It's huge. Yeah, it's got 12. Yeah,
34,000?
it's huge.
That's a
Yeah.
huge
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, it's
So
huge.
you guys could fit some more people.
We could fit a lot more people. Yeah, move up to Wenatchee. We could use you, bro. Yeah, so we've got a lot going on there. Yeah, so it's been a challenge to maintain the space with our smallish numbers,
Yeah, that's not cheap.
but no, it's not. You understand. So yeah,
Yeah.
we've opened ourselves up to some partners that can use this space, help offset the costs, and so we're doing that, and it's been really good. It's been hard. It's been some changes, but mostly for the better. Just for, I mean, two principal reasons. I mean, we want to use the space that God's entrusted to us for good kingdom work, and we do want to financially be able to take care of the space. And so it's done those two things. So God's really brought three really good partners to our building. So we work on that a lot, and just try to be good Christians. Just try to love the Lord, and when somebody comes, I mean, we love on them. We hope they come back, and we try to encourage them and support them, and in any way we can.
Okay. Wow. Well, I wish we were talking about this earlier because I think that we could, if you're okay, when I so this will go about 30 different places
Mhm.
and all the keywords. So the reality is, if somebody typed in Wenatchee, is it First Church of Christ?
Mhm.
If they're probably going to come across this. I kind of wish we would have put this in the beginning. Maybe I'll have to say in there that it's at the end. Let's see, what else can we? Well, let's. I mean, I do know some things about the Church of Christ, and I don't
Mhm.
want to assume.
Mhm.
One of the things I remember from the Church of Christ. Well, one of the things I loved about the Church of Christ, which I think is so important, is that you know the when Jesus had the Last Supper, he said, "Do this every single time you meet, every single time you come together."
Mhm.
So I know
Mhm.
most Church of Christs have that communion. Is that something you
We
guys
do. We
participate in?
do.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. We take communion each week, and that's really, I mean, that's probably the most important reason we come together. It's
Right.
is to commune together and recognize Jesus' sacrifice, recognize the body, acknowledge that the blood, and also our own mistakes, and the victory that He won for us in the resurrection. So that's at the heart of our worship. That's the heart of our time together. If you look at the early church, the Church of Christ seek to model the early church. I think it's Acts 2:42 where it says they met together and they broke bread, they worshiped, they prayed, and they studied the apostles' teachings. So that's what we try to do. I
Yes.
mean, we break bread, we worship, very simple worship. It is a cappella, so we have continued that tradition of a cappella. Not that there's anything wrong with instruments, but we just happen to be a cappella. And then, we pray together. We pray a lot for one another during and hopefully through the week. And we study the word, so the word
Yeah.
we're trying to be interactive about it and learn from scripture, whether it be Old Testament or Psalm or proverb, or a letter or a gospel, whatever it may be. So that's
Okay.
it. Just simple
Well,
Christianity. Mhm.
yeah, that's great. I mean, I did want to kind of add to the whole thing about acapella because if somebody hears this and goes to the church for the first time, they might be kind of thrown off by that. But I want to
Yeah.
just say from my experience at Church of Christ, the Church of Christ that I've gone to, it's like they're some of the most musical people I've ever met.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I like to say, and maybe different other people would say it different ways, but I like to say it's not that necessarily music instruments are wrong. It's just that
Mhm.
it's a way to kind of focus more and be able to
Mhm.
kind of clear the path. And, it's just a style, it's just a
Mhm.
preference.
Mhm.
And, Church of Christ kind of feels that it's a way to worship the Lord, which
Mhm.
that's what we're called to do in Acts, just kind of a little bit of a cleaner way. So if
Mhm.
anybody does show up to the church after listening to this and is thrown off by the no musical instruments, if you actually got to meet some of these people, I'm sure at this church, I'm sure a lot of them play instruments, but
Right.
it's not a matter of not being musical or anything like that. It's just a matter of trying to focus in on worshiping our Creator versus
Mhm.
being distracted. So I think that's important. Yeah, it sounds like you guys do the same thing. That's great. So wow, I didn't know you still went to a Church of Christ. I
Yeah.
didn't really know about that. So that's so great.
Yeah. Thanks,
And
man.
you're an elder. Is there a lot of other elders, or are you
Yeah,
one of?
so we have 3 elders. We have 3
Okay.
elders, and I'm one of them. Yeah. So I've
Is there
been
deacons too, or?
Yeah, we have 1 deacon. We haven't really, expanded the deacon model too much, so I think we may do that. So we do have a deacon that's, in charge of the facility and the grounds. And,
Mhm.
we've got some coordinators that do a few different functions, some finance and yeah, there's a couple little groups. Yeah, it's a lovely little group of folks, and,
Yeah.
we cherish it, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're over an hour now. Are you feeling kind of crunched for time or anything? Or can we
I'm good,
Okay.
Justin, I'm
Oh good.
enjoying this. Yeah,
Well,
you
I
bet.
wanted to is it okay if we could kind of spend the rest of the time talking about your church?
Sure.
And then we can kind of wrap up?
Yeah,
Okay.
you bet.
So 10:10, and then you mentioned that there was kind of a Bible study like around 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, or if somebody did
Well,
want to show up.
actually, the Bible study is part of the worships. Yeah, so we
Okay.
have traditional sermons and/or interactive Bible study during the worship. So it's real streamlined. We get together, we do some prayers for one another. It's such a small group that if folks got things on their minds and their hearts or some update, we pray. And so that might take 2 minutes or might take 12 minutes. So we spend some time
Hmm.
in prayer for one another. And then there's usually a biblical lesson. It could be more sermon based where it's more just one way, or it could be more interactive. So just depending on the content and how conversational people are, we'll have a study of God's word, some scripture or a series of or sets of scriptures. And then we have a worship time. And
Hmm.
so we'll worship for 15, 20 minutes or so, and we just kind of hearts uplifted there. Towards the end of the worship time, we start to the songs and those that are selected are more geared towards the Savior sacrifice. So they're geared more in the content of Jesus' sacrifice and what he endured. And then we commune together. So we take the Lord's Supper, and then we close, and we'll have a little bit more prayer time or kind of closing remarks. So yeah,
So is
that's
there
it.
anything
Yeah.
before 10:10, or
Nothing
everything starts at 10?
explicit. Nothing that nothing.
Okay. But some people do show up, earlier and kind of
Yeah,
fellowship and yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Stay early and stay late too. So we have folks
Is that
that'll visit for an hour some days after
uh-huh.
church and just catch up and enjoy each other's company and
Is there a lot of fellowship that happens in the church?
yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
that's
some
great.
prayer groups. There's some social things going on. We like to eat, we love to eat together,
Yeah, with
right? So
with
Christians, who doesn't love to
34,000
eat?
square feet. Exactly,
Yeah,
I
we
really
we
with
can
34,000 square feet, I feel like you have to have a place to eat.
yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. So we got a kitchen. We got it all. So it's
Yeah.
sweet. Yeah.
Do you know what year it started?
So interesting story. If you really want to go the whole way back, so Alexander Campbell. I don't know if you're familiar with that name, the Campbells and
I've
the
heard that
Stones,
name.
or yeah. So Alexander Campbell was a champion of the Restoration movement in the 19th century. So think
Uh-huh.
18. Oh boy, I want to say 50s, 60s, that kind of timeline, Civil War
Mhm.
timeline. So Alexander Campbell started a college in what I think was Virginia, but now West Virginia in the late 19th century for restoration principles. And there was a man named John Palmer who moved out, who went to school there, studied under Alexander Campbell, was on fire for restoration principles that the Church of Christ and the Christian Church and the disciples of Christ all aspire to or adhere to, generally speaking. And so he came out to Wenatchee, Washington. I think he fought in the Civil War,
Really?
and he came out to Wenatchee in 1899. And Wenatchee in
Hold on,
18
Campbell or Stone?
Stone, or no, not Stone, John Palmer. John Palmer, who was a student of,
Palmer.
yeah, he was a student of Alexander Campbell. So he was a
Okay.
direct student of Alexander Campbell. So John Palmer came out in 1899, And
1899. Okay.
he
So
started meeting with
Campbell
some
was I was just looking up
yeah,
Campbell. He died
yep.
in 1866. So this is 30 years
So
after
yeah,
Campbell's
so
death.
he was a little bit of an older man by the time he came out. So yeah, so John Palmer studied under Alexander Campbell. Palmer fought in the Civil War, I think, for like the 13th Illinois Infantry or something like for the North. Anyway, so he came out in 1890 as an older man, probably in his 60s, 50s, 60s or so. Wenatchee was growing at the time due to the agriculture industry getting kicked off, the railroad coming into Wenatchee. Started meeting with some other like-minded people, and around restoration principles around 1903, 1904, there was a split, and it was split over some, I would say, arguably semi-petty things. So some folks didn't want to have an organ in worship, and folks wanted to have a single communion cup, if you can believe that. And
Mhm,
this is pre-Spanish flu, if my history timeline's correct. So anyway,
mhm.
so there was some one cuppers and some a cappella, and that actually formed the Church of Christ, which we draw our history back to. So since then, and since the Spanish flu, and since other things, we do individual communion cups. There's not a lot of single cuppers anymore. We still are a cappella, though I don't think we're as maybe as adamant as some of those early adopters were back in 1904, 19, the first decade of the 20th century. Yeah, so that's the history. So the church goes all the way back. I say back to 1899 with John Palmer coming to Wenatchee.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the history. Incorporated
That's super cool.
1910. Yeah, incorporated 1910. Built the current building in 87, I think it was 1987. A lot of ups and downs. A lot of ups and downs for any old church. So that's where we are. Yeah, so we're trying
You
to.
know,
Yeah,
one
go
of the
ahead.
things that I don't wanna take away from what you're saying, but one of the areas you touched on was that split,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been using a lot of my brain cells to consuming the idea of conflict and
Mm-hmm.
church splits and things like
Mm,
that, and
yeah.
I think typically when people think about those kind of things, they're spoken of in a negative way. However, when you really look at the book of Acts and look at some of those conflicts that happened,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it's just framed in a way of a positive light. However, if you look at that, it expanded. Oh, it's not a negative thing.
Mm,
It actually expanded. You know how the Great Commission, says, buy a building and everybody just sit inside and nobody go
yeah.
out. That was what
Yeah.
the Great Commission said, right? No, it says go out. Really, I've really actually been, I mean, conflict's hard. I'm not saying that it's easy, but I've really been kinda looking at the way of because also another thing about conflict is it's inevitable. Would you agree with that? Or
Yes.
do you take for some reason, I've been thinking about a lot about conflict recently
It, y-
in a way of not
absolutely. Yeah.
not being negative, you know? What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
I think there's a strain there. Could be right. Well, yeah. To your point, conflict inevitable. I would say yes. Human
Mhm.
communication is one of the most difficult endeavors we have. We're ripe with misunderstanding. Misunderstanding leads to conflict, and also just competing agendas and priorities, limited resources. Yeah, conflict is inevitable. Different ways of
Nobody
looking
knows
at
better. You're
things.
a communication major.
Well, yeah. Um, so
The authority on
Oh,
communication.
that's funny. Wow. So, the artists don't get along with the engineers always, the left brain people don't get along with the right brain people. They have different ways of looking at things. And so I like to think that, yeah, we have a lot of different expressions of faith. We have a lot of different churches. I tend to think that the church is actually quite united, though it's at one level it appears divided. So I think if you find a committed, humble, mature member of the Lutheran Church or the Church of Christ or a Baptist church or a community church, I think that you'll find so much alike in them in terms of
Mhm.
demeanor, approach, even biblical understanding. It's incredible how similar they are. Now,
Absolutely.
at some of the margins, they do have different organizations, they have different budgets, they have different expressions of faith. Those things don't all gel together super easily. And I think it's
Mhm.
okay. I think it's
Yeah.
totally okay. And I wouldn't I'm secure enough in kind of my expression of faith that other folks who have a different expression of faith is okay. Now there's some fundamentals, like you talked about, that deep kind of inception level, third level truth that's deep inside you that are non-negotiables. But folks who have maybe a little different interpretive conclusion on some pretty debatable matter,
Mhm.
totally reasonable, totally to be expected. And we might disagree and say, you know what, this disagreement is probably a little bit too big for us to I don't know, worship together every single Sunday under the same roof, but I
Mhm.
totally love you and I totally respect you and I totally know your heart's for God and I want nothing but the best for you and I'm totally 100% your ally. And
Yeah.
so I
I
think
mean,
that's totally fine.
yeah. I think that conflict is a little scary
Mhm,
sometimes, especially when you start thinking through the ramifications of it that, gosh, if we conflict, this or that might happen. But I think a little bit bringing it into the faith, what our faith is in. And one of the things that I believe is that the spiritual idea of Jesus's church, like the bride of Christ, if you will,
mhm, mhm,
that idea that I don't have to really necessarily worry that that is gonna be uprooted, or I don't have to
mhm,
worry about the idea that the bride of Christ is gonna crumble. The
mhm,
bride of Christ, which, is talked about all through the New Testaments and
mhm,
Acts, is this spiritual concept
mhm,
that doesn't matter, what this donor or that donor or this idea or any, it's a true rock solid principle that isn't going anywhere. It's much bigger than if I want to drink out of one cup or if I want to have multiple cups. You know what I
mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's where I kind of get my confidence with
Mhm,
conflict in that, you know what? Let's take this as an opportunity. This doesn't
mhm,
have to be negative. You think this way, I think this way. Let's be productive. Let's
mhm,
talk about it. Let's each respect each other in love. And if we just really can't, get to the bottom of this and we cannot sit here on a weekly basis and worship together, let's figure those next steps out.
right.
Not in a way of anger or division or hurting somebody else, but in the way of like, okay, well, we can no longer be on the same roof, but I know over here there's a bunch of people that have to drive an hour, to come over here. What
Mhm,
if we started talking about meeting over here and you
mhm,
go over there? You know what I mean? I feel like it can be done in a productive way. Have you ever thought in terms of that? Or I mean, I guess, because I just really feel like anytime there's conflict or division at the church, it's always thought about in a negative way. But why does it have to
mhm.
be negative? I don't know. Am I totally off on that? Or
No, I don't think so. I think disagreements are okay.
yeah, I
You
think it
know,
can be very productive. Do you think
yeah,
it can be productive
I
or
think it can. I think it can. It's kind of like that CEO asking the question, or if somebody saying, "Hey, I
yeah,
disagree with that."
yeah,
And if the disagreement is strong enough that there has to be a different set of actions that come from that, it is what it is. I think it can be productive, and I think honesty is essential in that, And
mhm,
I would say, kind of get back to kind of the earlier things about your faith in God versus faith in man. If my faith is in man, in this man-made institution that I'm helping to create and maintain, and I
mhm,
ignore what you said about the bride of Christ of being this eternal, spiritual, indestructible being, or then that's when the anger, the stress, and comes out. But that's
mhm,
not godly. It's not
mm-mm,
godly to be angry or stressed about my interpretation or my institution or my program. That is
mhm,
not a godly quality, I don't think. I think putting your faith in God and seeing, as you so rightly said, the bride of Christ as this eternal, indestructible being that is the church, the universal church, the holy church, the church.
mhm,
That church is united. That church is
right,
strong. That church
yes,
is beautiful. That church is perfect. We're all part of
mhm,
it, though we might have different
mhm,
expressions of faith and we might have some disagreements on X, Y, and Z. We're part of that church, and I think remembering that is so important. I think
right,
it's right on. Yep.
yes, yes, yes. But so how long have you gone to this church?
About 6, so
6. Oh, you said
2019.
that.
Yeah, about 6 years or
2019, you
so,
said
yeah.
2. Okay. Well, I wanna visit now.
Yeah, well, come on up, man. Get on a little plane and we got a little
Yeah.
airport in Wenatchee or fly into Seattle or Spokane. We'll pick you up. Let's do it.
Well, if you could see, I'm actually looking right now on Google Maps and seeing, I guess I've never, so you're about 2 hours east of Seattle? Kind of between, like,
For a
Spokane and
little
Seattle?
closer to 245, a
Okay.
little closer to 245, yeah.
You're
Yeah, it's
kind of the
doable.
halfway between Spokane and Seattle.
Yeah, and if you're gonna come, I'd come before December or after March,
Right.
which might be good. If it's 116 degrees down there and you wanna come up in September or October or something, or April, May, Yeah, we do have little
Yeah.
snow events. We get ice, we get snow. The passes can be a little treacherous, but yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I
I'd
might
love to
just
have you.
uproot I might
Yeah,
uproot and, move my whole family up there,
let's
not
do
really,
it.
but
Let's do it. I know. I know.
no, it looks so cool. I mean, it's so great that you found your little
Thanks,
not
man.
little, I don't wanna say little, your home. I mean,
Oh,
it's your home.
appreciate you.
That's
Yeah.
so great.
Thanks for asking about it. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I think, I try to keep it, around an hour, and we're at about an hour and 25 minutes right now, but I don't want to miss anything that you really wanted to speak on. Is there anything that we're missing or
Well, I just want to say how much I admire you and love that you write, you put yourself out there, you're honest, you're wanting to influence the world in a positive way. You're always you're asking, you're curious, and I just really respect you and love you and think the world of you. So I'm so glad to that we've been connected for a quarter century now, and that we've had a chance to talk today. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you so much, Justin. Really appreciate you.
ditto, ditto.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. All right, we'll
All right,
talk to you
man.
real soon.
All right.
Okay,
Take care, man. See ya. Bye.
okay, bye.